Welcome. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the London Borough of Newham Crime and Antisocial Behaviour Scrutiny Commission. Can everyone present hear me? Please raise your hand to let me know you can hear me.
I can hear you.
I can hear you, Dan.
Thank you. This meeting is being held at Newham Town Hall. Members unable to join us physically at this location are able to join remotely. However, they will not be able to vote and their attendance won't be officially recorded, although their virtual attendance will be noted in the minutes. I would like to welcome the members of the public and press who are physically attending or watching on YouTube. With regards to the meeting etiquette, members of council, please can I ask you to indicate if you wish to speak by raising your physical hand or by using the hand up signal on the Zoom dashboard. Please can everyone physically present continue to wear their face mask until they're invited to speak. After you finish speaking, please replace your mask. Please can everyone be mindful of social distancing requirement during and after the meeting. For this meeting, we will be aided by Roger Raymond and Colin Smith, assist councillors and officers with technology. This meeting of the London Borough of Newham Crime and Antisocial Behaviour Scrutiny Commission now called to order. Item 1.
Hello, committee. Dr. Bailey is the deputy chair of the committee, but formally we have to elect the chair for the actual meeting itself. So, do you have any nomination for Dr. Bailey to chair? Got a seconder. Dr. Masters is seconded. So, Councillor Bailey is the chair of this meeting. I'll pass it back.
Thank you. I would like to welcome everyone to the meeting. Item 2, apologies for absence. Apologies from Councillor Daniel Lee Parkway and the Councillor Ken Clark. Are there any more apologies? Thank you. Item 3, declaration of interest. Are there any members wishing to make any declaration of interest? If no, the clerk will note and return that there are no declaration of interest. Item 4, minutes of previous meeting. The next item are the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of September 2021. I move as a correct record. Are there any amendments? The meeting of the commission held on the 21st of September 2021. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Wood. Thank you. The minutes are agreed. Thank you. Item 5, environment, tackling issues such as tipping. We will now move to item 5. And this item is the Commission community safety and antisocial behaviour in an environmental manner, especially the enforcement of fly tipping. I'm delighted to welcome to this meeting Councillor James Beckles, Cabinet Member for Crime and Community Safety, Councillor James Asser, Lead Member, Environment, Highways and Sustainable Transport, Jamie Blake, Corporate Director of Environment and Sustainable Transport, Gary Connors, Assistant Director of Community Safety, Chief Inspector Michael O'Donoghue, representing North East Basic Command Unit, Waltham Forest and Newham Police. Is Inspector Saeed Khan?
No.
Thank you. Please, I'm very pleased that you're able to join for this item. I'd like to invite Councillor James Beckles, Cabinet Member for Crime and Community Safety, to make some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Chair. As you will see from this paper, you'll see that it's a joint collaboration with the Community Safety Service and the Environment and Sustainable Transport colleagues. Scrutiny members have previously heard from me and Gary Connors, the Community Safety team, about what we do to investigate illegal dumping of waste and how our officers are tasked with going out and ensuring that we find, we prosecute, and we ensure and we reduce offending in this area. Scrutiny meetings at the last meeting asked for the wider plan and programme around this area, and we have brought this back through our paper. This, as you will see, will also encompass work that's conducted by the community safety team, and you will see that we have begun the process of procuring the services of an enforcement contract to ensure that our streets are free from litter, but fly tipping still remains an issue, but one which we are getting on top of. I hope this is a constructive conversation about what we do in the education side through the community safety team and what the environment and sustainable transport team are doing to tackle illegal dumping of waste. So I hope this is a constructive meeting and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beckles. Are there any members, any questions from any members? Thank you, Councillor Masters.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question is, I mean, we've all seen the pictures on social media of the enforcement team sort of going out and targeting specific areas. And this is possibly a question more to Councillor Assa. What's happening with street cleaning? Because we know it's been taken back in-house, and we were told we would see service improvements. But the major thing I'm picking up from residents at the moment is the low visibility of street cleaners across East Ham at the moment, that whereas you would see them around, now you're not. And I had one complaint from a resident who hadn't had her street done in 3 weeks. So I'm just wondering whether part of the strategy is to concentrate them in particular areas, or sort of operate at different times of day to the times of day we're used to seeing them. And I'm just wondering, now they're back in-house, you know, what has actually gone on, what's happening with numbers, what's happening with sort of times of day that they're working, and just generally, you know, what changes have occurred in the service.
Thank you, Susan Masters. Do you need to have any?
No, I can come in with some of that. Jamie may need to pick up some of it too, particularly on the kind of specifics of day-to-day operations, which obviously I don't manage personally. In terms of street cleaning, we obviously brought that back in-house the middle of last year. It needs a huge amount of restructuring. The 3 separate companies we had brought back in operated in different ways. And as a result of that, there are different levels of service, which is one of the reasons it didn't work. Our ability to move things around to where we need them has improved, because certainly up in the northeastern area, which obviously your ward is in, has a higher level of pressure than the southern wards, but there were similar levels of resources because it was different companies with different things. So we're now able to move that around. We brought in a new senior manager I know has been in your ward managing the street scene and looking at all the problems, and she is currently going around the ward looking at trying to understand the specific thing. We're going to the service is being restructured, which will take about 6 months, so that is going on, but we're also moving things around. So it's interesting, some of your residents are saying they're not seeing as much, and it may be we've just changed the times to make it more effective. Because in other areas, we're being told by people they're seeing more. So what we certainly found is that some of the roads were being swept once a week when they needed to be swept daily, and other roads are getting swept daily when they needed to be swept just once a week. Part of the problem with that is that we've inherited cleaning patterns that haven't been reviewed in a significantly long time, and aren't really based on current needs, but based on long needs. So they're being reviewed as well. So part of that changes that. I mean, that obviously is street sweeping as opposed to fly tipping, but restructuring that service and moving people around is part of that. I don't know if Jamie has got any more details on kind of specific day-to-day operations, but it's being reviewed closely.
So the review process is going to take a while. It has to be said, bringing 3 different companies into a single organisation has been a challenge. We have started to make some changes, and if there are specific comments that members would like to make about individual areas, we're quite happy to take that on board and look at them. What we have tried to do is to focus on cleaning of waste and cleaning in the main shopping areas, main areas of footfall. There are practices that have happened within the previous businesses that we are trying to change and change the culture of the staff coming over. There are instances apparently where if staff were sick, there was effectively no cover, so irrespective of where or what they were doing, it just didn't get done for a period of holiday or absence. So we're trying to build some more resilience into the service in those ways. We won't get it all right. It's a complicated thing to do. IT is a bit of a catch-all for all of this, but none of the sweeping rounds or any of the schedules are in any form of IT base. So we're doing some proper routing and scheduling that needs to be done, but that will take some time. So I'm sure we'll have hiccups along the way. This time of year it's difficult because we're leafing, so it just takes much longer to get round. So we've got some people that are litter picking, they won't necessarily sweep up the leaves. We've got some bigger crews with bigger trucks that are getting the leaves off the ground. And that is an issue, perversely we try and plant more trees, but more trees means more leaves. So this time of the year it is difficult and we won't be keeping up with the schedules, but that's a common feature of most street cleansing operations this time of year.
Thank you, Jamie. I've seen there's a lot of leaves in Manor Park, we just pile up, where the Manor Park sorting office, and it's been there for weeks, and I mean it doesn't look very good. If we can get that.
Certainly we can have a look at that. A lot of the leaves are down now. Certainly my garden, all the leaves are down off of a couple of big old trees that I've got there, and most of the leaves through this course will be down. Once everything's down, it's easier then to sweep up, because once we've got them up, there's not that constant leafing coming down. And we've got the same operation in the parks, so we will get on top of it.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, if you may indulge me. Firstly, I think everybody, all councillors, are really pleased about this initiative because it's so important to our residents. It is the number one topic, I think, that people complain about, fly tipping and litter. I appreciate this is not a solely enforcement-led approach, but obviously it's quite important that we have the ability to take sanctions against people, especially repeat offenders. I noticed there's a reference to cost sharing, so I assume that I was expecting to get some income when issuing fixed penalty tickets. But looking at page 18, the number of fixed penalty tickets that have been issued historically, I've asked this before, I didn't really get an answer I understood, so I can't remember who. But how many of these FPNs, these fixed penalty tickets, actually are paid? And how many are therefore not paid? How many are progressed to court? And then hopefully we'll be able to get some of these, at least, that there will be civil action and a fine will be issued. Again, I would like to know how much of those fines. I'm not sure if we get any money, fines issued at courts. But I'm just wondering, great, we're issuing loads of FPNs, but how much income and how much of a deterrent is it if, I'm making this up, 33% are never paid. So if I can ask that question as well.
You're going to reply, Gary?
What do you want me-
Chair.
So I'll do this thing. I've got a series of questions, but I can always email in there. I'm just wondering again, what cooperation you're having with the private rental licensing sector? Because again, there's a clear connection between many of these fly tips are actually by landlords when they want to get rid of stuff, get rid of beds and mattresses, or it's landlords not controlling their tenants appropriately and in accordance with the new licence. So again, and I know it's not easy, none of this ever is, but some quick wins on this is some high profile prosecutions of landlords or landlord tenants and getting landlords to carry out their legal responsibilities to again control the behaviour of the tenants, educate their tenants, make it clear to tenants this is how you dispose of rubbish and this is not how you dispose of rubbish, or that could even call my licence into account or your tenancy into account. So that's it for now.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. On the first question, apologies, I brought back a previous paper on a breakdown of enforcement on a range of my services in enforcement, and I would have had the breakdown and costings there. I don't have them on me tonight, but I can come back to those. I'll come back to the Commission if that's okay. There were obviously a number of issues getting to courts during the COVID period, so we had a reduction in the fines that we took money back from. But I did have a breakdown in the previous paper, so I'll bring that back. Apologies, I don't have it here. I guess the second question on the work with housing. I know certainly our colleagues in the public realm are linking in with housing around the cleansing services and ensuring cleansing is done right from an enforcement point of view. And I do the same around antisocial behaviour, closely with our housing colleagues, both in the LBM properties, but also the licensing scheme as well. Just about ensuring that we get our information out there, that we're enforcing as we would do with any ASB enforcement, that we're ensuring that we get the messaging out there. The education part, and we're talking through the wider piece of work in the round, and we make sure that we're getting the education out there. We're constantly telling our landlords, because as you mentioned, Councillor, and I think it's been mentioned here before, it's the turnover of some of our properties, particularly around the licensing scheme, the rental market. It's just reiterating those messages back. So we're working closely with our masters and the licensing team, specifically around that at the moment. So we're looking to enforce where we can. And it's about how they have officers that work in the licensing scheme, patrol around, they look at environmental issues to the licensing scheme with with landlords on a private licence scheme. They report back issues to us as well, and we ask them to look out for these sort of issues, report back to our team. And we do take a lot of our reports that come through our uniform system actually come from housing colleagues, so I think that works quite well. But it's, I think as Councillor asked us earlier, there's a whole piece of work that we are doing on the education side. Hopefully we'll get better on that.
Councillor Masters.
Thank you. It's not actually a question. It's in a way I'm kind of doing the executive's job for them. One of the really interesting things I saw when I was looking at the consultation on the new private landlord licensing scheme is that there is exactly scope there, so that when a landlord takes on a tenant, one of their duties as part of a licensing scheme will be to inform their tenants about waste disposal and recycling. And I think that's fantastic, because that's something that I know's come up on a number of occasions when we've been sort of talking about fly tipping and waste. So I was really pleased to see that. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I can just add, I was going to say, I was thinking about when we get the answer and I realised we hadn't said it because it's Councillor Hammond is leading on that. But one of the problems with that household waste is part of the prosecution is getting evidence, but of course you don't necessarily have your name and address written on your bed and your mattress and your furniture, so it's hard to find. But actually, including it in the licence thing gives them an extra incentive. So that's a key thing in terms of that prevention stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask Jamie, how many number of the trucks we have in terms of to have the cleanliness of these leaves, especially in surrounding of the schools. If you look the St. School, LMR School, and E7, St. Stephen's School, parents are going to drop their children in the morning, as we all know that it's a wet weather, streets are wet, and those leaves are becoming an imminent health and safety issue. You know, the falling trips could be. Is there any way, if you can just, at least these establishments, education establishments, schools, we can just look into priority to just clean the surrounding? Thank you.
We can certainly look at that, Councillor. I'm not aware that we do any priority-based leafing around that type of thing, whether it's schools or other high areas of footfall. We sweep the sort of main transport hubs and shopping areas more frequently, as you'd expect. But schools are normally mopped up in general areas. I think when we do the mapping, because schools are often associated with higher litter levels, we probably need to factor that in there, but I don't think we do anything at the moment around leafing. But if you've got particular concerns about those areas, we'll pick that up with the operational teams. That'll be fine.
Thank you. Councillor Naguda.
Yes, on page 20, you mentioned about incentives. You mentioned about changing behaviors. You know, because of the mobility we have where people come and go, how do you intend to change behaviors when there's so much mobility, people go in and out? Because I've got an idea of something you could do, but let me hear what you're going to answer first.
I think the churn of population is a real challenge for them. And
Yeah.
that's the same in all.
So how you are going to change the behavior?
Sorts of communications that we do, and potentially some of the increase around flighting over the past couple of years we've been so focused on the comms around COVID, we haven't necessarily kept up with the general communications about other services. So the stuff that we've outlined in sort of 6.4 around education and engagement, I think is really important. But we just need to carry on doing it, and we need to accept the fact that we need to give these messages out on a regular basis in as many different ways as possible, through as many different media as possible, and in as many different languages as possible, to make sure we get out as many businesses and residents as we possibly can. And I think that's an ongoing challenge, and it will always be a challenge for a borough like Newham that's got that churning population coming in and out of the borough.
You know, in other affluent areas, when you pass through, wherever there's a hotspot where people fly tip, there's always a big sign. You've got a big sign about recycling, about other things, but there's not even one single big banner that says don't put rubbish here or don't fly tip here. Why don't we have that, since you're going to have a new procurement? Why don't we have them in areas where we know there's a lot of fly tipping?
Well, hopefully in a couple of weeks' time, that's exactly what you will see on buses and on our advertising things and on bus shelters. We've got a big campaign being launched before Christmas around illegal dumping as part of the education and engagement that we're planning to do. So that will start hitting in a couple of weeks' time.
Because if I see a big poster, I'll think twice before I put something there. I think we really need to think very carefully what we do with that.
If I had £1 for every time a member of the public has sent me a picture of 3 bags dumped under a no dumping sign, I would not have to work in local government at the moment.
Let's give it a trial anyway.
There is always that, but trying that, doing more of it is
See what happens.
absolutely right.
Councillor Riaz, Councillor Assa and Councillor Bass.
Thank you, Chair. I want to make a comment and then I'll ask the question. My experience is that over the last few weeks, street cleansing has improved a lot. I can say that by my word, that when I walk around, I see them, one over there and one on Brand, and they're all good. And I spoke to him today, and I said, as soon as you clear, the wind blows and you got more leaves there. So I carry it on and on. The lady rang me last week and he said to me, have you stopped, cleaning the roads? I said, no, we haven't. She said, but I haven't seen a road sweeper for weeks. She said, I'm 84, I'm scared of going out. If I do go out, I'm going to fall over, And I said, what road do you live? And she came to the road. I said, I'm standing on the corner. And I said, I can't see any leaves on the road. Rectory Road it was. And I was standing outside the, youth zone. I said, I can't see it. I can see it clearly. So why she said that, I don't know. But the point I want to make what Joy said, that if you, where you have this fly tip, if you put a poster up, I was told a few years ago that actually it attracts if you put the notice up there, because the council had the van go down clear. As soon as they clear it, somebody else, so it was decided then, I'm talking about 8-9 years ago, that not to do that, because if we put that notice up, it attracts, But I don't know the way forward. I think one thing I often thought about, is it possible, is it legal? Where there's a fly tip and there are certain, houses, they got their CCTV cameras. Can enforcement officer speak to the resident, but look, this is it, could we have a look, on your camera, would you allow us, so we can see who's done it? I think that might help. What do you think? Is it possible? Can it be done?
Yeah, we can do.
Councillor Asser.
Yeah, can I just come in on a couple of those, and I'll have to leave Gary to do the cameras and enforcement for you. So just to back up what Jamie said, there is going to be we've been working up a big publicity campaign that will cover some of the stuff that Councillor Group has said, and others too. That'll be launched, and we'll certainly want ward councillors to be involved in that in the local spots too. I think on the signage, it's always tricky. I think, to be blunt, there are, and this is being blunt, there are 3 types of fly tipping. There is the blokes who come in the van who say, I'll take away your furniture for a £5, and then, they're going to dump it because you haven't paid for it properly. There are the people who just don't care and stick things in the street because they just don't care. And then there are people who just don't understand. And, I've heard it from people saying, well, we've always left it on that corner and it gets taken away. Now, that's where the work we've done, and with the joint production stuff we did with residents on the chalk paintings and the CSI tape work, because actually where it's declined, we've targeted that on places where we know it's that kind of, well, we've always left it there kind of flight a bit, and it does educate people. So those signs work in those cases. They don't really work in the people who just don't care, because they just don't care, and that's where your enforcement comes in, but also designing out some of the stuff. So in terms of the sort of population, people turning over, I think that's where, so to take a good example of that is flats above shops, where always there's a high turnover. You could go and knock on the door and tell someone in January, by March there's a whole new range of people. So making sure there's stuff attached to the licence that has to be in the flat to explain to people. But we're also looking at that is changing the way they remove their waste. So giving them specific colour bags, so when it's coming out of the flats and can identify it, because problems with flats above shops, they don't necessarily put it, they stick it with the bins in the high street, and being able to identify that. So there's some kind of tricks is the wrong word, but tricks of the trade, I suppose, to be able to identify where bags are coming from, so we can then tackle down and spot it, which will kind of deal with some of that issue you've raised.
Thank you. Councillor Masters.
I was going to sort of pick up on what you were saying. Again, I kind of feel that I'm playing the role of the executive tonight.
I don't mind you backing me up, that's fine.
Just for a change. There's a really interesting community project that's just been taken on in East Ham from somebody who is going to make artworks out of fly tipping.
Oh, it's just an assembly project?
Yeah.
Yes.
I wasn't aware of this, okay.
No, a lady who sort of pops up on Central Park looking for support, Ellie. That's it.
Remember we were.
Yeah, because we're both at the Community Neighbourhood Assembly.
And the art's very good.
And she's been sort of consulting with residents on, the kind of artwork they want to see. But I mean, we're quite excited about that. So there will be some fly tip sculptures coming our way. So we'll see if that has an impact.
Well, hold back, folks. There may be some elements of that in our communications plan, but I'm going to tease you with it, but not tell you what it is yet. But I think if we can get it done, I think councillors and the public will appreciate it, and it may have a good effect.
Thank you, councillor.
Sorry, I interrupted Gary, didn't I? I was going to answer in a much more comprehensive way than me.
Very after councillor, apparently. Yeah, councillor, I think your question was about the use of CCTV. I mean, we do have a series of cameras that we move to our fly tip hotspots. We don't move them every day. We're trying to leave it there to actually capture evidence. And we are looking into then changing the law about how we can use private CCTV as well. And we're looking into that and trying to have the infrastructure in our own CCTV suite so we can pick that up and work with police on that as well. But I think that, if I'm being honest, on some of the tactics we'll be trying to use in the areas where we have CCTV on our hotspot areas already, as Councillor Astor said, it's fine if we get the fantastic image of the man in the van turning up with his license plate right there in front of our camera. Unfortunately, what we capture a lot of is a series of people over a couple of hours all coming with no name tags on them. So we don't know who they are and exactly which house they've come from, all coming and dumping bags in an area where they may not have realised or do. And I think that's where it's difficult. So what we've tried to do on that basis, and I think I mentioned it here at the meetings previously at Scrutiny, is to try and leaflet that road and tell people, look, we picked this up, we've got images of a number of people in the street, whether it's you or not, dumping in this area. Please be aware we're watching, etc., and we're looking to prosecute. So I think it's difficult in the sense that it's hard to identify people on CCTV if they just rock up the bag. We don't have that many people turning up in the vans in that way. But we certainly can look to utilise local knowledge as much as CCTV cameras. If we do a door knock like that, some people will tell us it's number 22, it's number 20. We can start to follow up in that way. And we'll certainly do more of that going forward.
Thank you.
Sorry, just getting, what's the legal position? Can we use those footages in the court? Is that admissible evidence? I mean, in presence of the Data Protection Act 1998.
Our footage of private citizens' footage.
Our footages and the private book.
Our footage, absolutely.
Yeah.
Private citizen footage, that's what we're working through now. There's been a change last year in legislation about how you can use it. The difficulty is with private footage, you can watch your curtilage essentially. You know, you should be watching, it's about voyeurism, so you can't be watching your next door neighbours, etc. And so if something passes the line of sight of your, within where you have it legally looking, we can look to pick up that. Please do it all the time if you're looking at emergencies and somebody runs through gardens. We can pick that legislation up. But we can absolutely use our footage, absolutely.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Jamie?
Certainly be interested in the Commission's view about shaming people, about using some of that footage and publicising it. Certainly Redbridge have done that in the past. I know Barking and Dagenham, I believe, have done it in the past, and a number of other boroughs have gone down that route. So that's taking, those types of videos, Councillor, you spoke about, and just putting it on YouTube. Some of them have done it with a Aussie man type commentary on it or commentary, but the message is serious. These people are dumping and they are blighting the area, normally the area that they live, but these aren't people nipping across the border from Redbridge in the middle of the night to dump waste in Newham. These are unfortunately Newham residents who are doing it normally in their own street.
Yes.
So a lot of this stuff people would potentially recognise them, but that's not a direction that we've gone in at the moment.
Well, what I did a few years ago, I mean, I've said it before, is that my daughter's going to work and she came back home. We know the neighbour who did it just a few doors down, and she came back and she said to me, so-and-so is dumping a duvet. So I said to her, okay, before you go, I wrote a note. Yes, it was early morning, winter time. She couldn't identify my handwriting anyway, and I put it through her letterbox. And I said to her, if we ever see you dumping any rubbish again, we're going to report you. Yeah, because she saw her. And we said, we're going to report you. I said, don't you do that anymore. You're making the road look a mess. I don't think she's done it again. Put the frighteners. I was so angry, knowing that you live on the road, you want to keep the place clean, and you do something like that.
I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of you.
Jamie said that direction. If it's not breach of any ICO guidelines, so why we cannot adopt that in the new hand, like Jamie just mentioned, is in the red. Don't you think so it's going to help?
I think, and
we've taken a political direction at least.
Yeah,
discuss it with me. We've taken a political direction not to name and shame. I think that was seen as not being probably the best way. And there was a greater focus on education and enforcement. And I think from the programme, you do see education, engagement, enforcement, environmental stuff. So this is what we're doing. We might want to reconsider again, do we want to name and shame residents of those people coming into the borough who are committing these offences? We are taking a zero tolerance approach, and I think this is part of the trajectory of doing that. So perhaps this might be a role for Scrutiny to look at that and examine the effectiveness of it in other boroughs and has it led to a decrease. So I think
I think it would be a good deterrence. Yeah.
Councillor Masters?
I was just going to say, in short, save us sort of doing a whole scrutiny, bearing in mind how tight the various scrutiny schedules are at the moment. Does it work? I mean, politics aside, does it work to name and shame? Has it worked for other boroughs?
Truthfully, I don't know. And I think it would be difficult, certainly the colleague who works for me, Bo, comes from Redbridge, and it was part of a much bigger campaign. So pulling a single item out of that to try and prove whether it worked or not. I'm sure we could find some details of it. I'm sure someone's done a study on it somewhere. Someone's always done a study on something somewhere. So we'll look and find out.
Okay.
I think on that, there's probably two answers. I think it probably varies borough to borough, and you'll get different results depending on various factors that are local. I also suspect it comes back to that three different types of some, you know, some people will be ashamed, like your neighbour who wouldn't do it again. Other people just don't care. And so I suspect you get mixed results, and it probably depends on what the problem lies. But I suspect there's evidence out there to have a look at, and scrutiny might be interested in seeing how it might work.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair, can I just ask a question, please? You know, these road sweepers, do they actually report when they see fly tipping?
They should do.
They should do. And I've noticed my road sweeper, you know, because where I sit, I can see them. There's a time it didn't come for 3 weeks. So the place was terrible, especially with masks now. People are just dumping them everywhere. So how often are they supposed to clean the street? How often, what is the requirement for them to sweep the street? Is it once a week? Is it 2 weeks? What is it? Because one day I didn't see him for 3 weeks.
Councillor,
And the place was terrible.
it will absolutely vary. And as I've said, there's instances where if people are away from a particular beat, they haven't covered in the past. So what we're going to work on now is complete redesign of the service so that we can answer that question and we can give people very clear commitments about how often we should be cleaning various parts of the borough. We have not got that information now because it doesn't exist.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Susan Masters.
I've just been reminded of something underlined here, point 6.6 on page 21, talking about the impact of residents carrying out home and garden improvements and the impact of business waste. I'm just wondering whether the garden waste removal service has been restored yet. Just talking about that, because you can see why people might be fly tipping if they've used the lockdown to get their gardens done, but they can't actually get rid of the waste. I mean, like there's someone again who's got a problem with Japanese knotweed, and we haven't removed it because we can't find somebody to incinerate it, apparently. So I'm just wondering, I mean, obviously Japanese knotweed is a case aside and a really serious issue. But in terms of your bog standard garden waste, are we able to take it away now?
Not at the moment. It's currently suspended, and this comes in from the shortage of lorry drivers, which is the impact. And I've spoken to council about this, but the shortage of lorry drivers, which we know has disrupted our ability to move to weekly recycling, is also disrupting normal service. So there is a kind of tiered system of what we suspend, and green waste is suspended before we suspend recycling or bin waste for obvious reasons. At the moment, we're hoping to get it back in December, but it does depend on levels of recruitment. All councils are suffering this. We've been quite lucky in London. We've been quite lucky because our service is in-house, that we've been protected in the way that some of the rural districts have been suspending services way back from the spring. I know from personal experience, my mum lives in the rural area, and they haven't had a green waste collection since June. So the lorry driver thing is having a real impact on all councils, and the main focus is making sure we collect the black bins, particularly in the run up to Christmas when the capacity go up. But as soon as we've got the capacity to do it, we will, and we are trying to train up our own staff to be drivers and things and doing what we can. But it's a brutal market out there. We've had drivers approached in their cabs offering them jobs, and it's the agency staff as well becomes difficult, because we can have people start at 9 in the morning and be offered a £10,000 more job by lunchtime. Because the supermarkets are throwing money at the problem in a way that public sector can't.
I've had we had a streets cleaner, and they're moving to East Ham somewhere, around our area. I'm telling you, he was one of the best. Whenever he sweep the street and you look, but if you see any rubbish, if somebody puts it half place done it, he doesn't just litter pick, because I noticed some of the street cleaners, they just litter pick and don't sweep. He's sweep. And he's there all the time. We have little chats. Well, don't know what happened now, because we haven't seen him in the area, even in East End. If you get people like that, the place is so tired. The next problem is these bins, you know, the coloured bins that you can put 2 green bins in. They have them all over the place. What I noticed, you know, the big bins, you put 2 bins in.
Euro bins, they.
Whatever. They're tearing the doors off and they're dumping rubbish all over. They look nice when it started, but it's just a total mess. I mean, I've had to report to Councillor Patel, because he's Manor Park councillor, because there's one near the Blakely's Arms, which is near to the sorting office. And there's times I go around there and you think, oh my God, it's almost like somebody dumped a whole house, and it's clean, and then it's all out, it starts again. It's just a joke, you know. So as you said, as you said, Jamie, when are we going to see some improvements in, you know, street cleaners and all these people come in-house now?
Can I pick up that? Because I think there's a largely political question here. So possibly it's good news for Councillor Masters if you haven't seen your good cleaner for a while, because we may have moved people around. I think that the thing is, we do get really good people, and I think people do notice their street cleaners when they're particularly good, because people engage with them, which is perhaps sometimes why people say I haven't seen a cleaner for ages, because people get to know a specific individual and they move on, and it may be that, I mean, they may have just left. I don't know.
Yeah.
People do change jobs. I mean, part of the problem we had is that, as I say, one of the companies, and I think it's the one covering your area, will keep the people on agency contracts rather than giving them permanent staff. What we're doing is exactly what we've done with the other services we've insourced, is ending that reliance on agency and putting people on permanent jobs in the council on proper terms and conditions, because that's the way you motivate people and make them feel part of their job, and not having that has been a problem. The example I would give you is to look at the Parks and Green Spaces service, which we brought in-house 2 years ago. Very similar situation when we brought it in, about the standards of service and the appalling way it was run. And like that, we brought in new management and we'll turn it round. But it takes time to unpick some of those serious problems, particularly when it's not been looked at for a long time. So we brought in, from where we were just during this year, we've got a new director of public realm who we poached from Redbridge, much to their irritation. I'm always pleased when boroughs are irritated. It means you've got a good member of staff who has done this before, and I've been advised, you know, successfully turned their service around. We've got a brand new assistant director of public realm looking at the street scene stuff. I know is going around war. So this will happen, and what they're working on. We've had to spend quite a lot of time getting those companies back in-house, sorting all the terms and conditions, the negotiations with the unions, all the things that go along when you're insourcing, which meant the actual service change is now starting now. So that's what we're doing over the next 6 months, and dealing with some of the things. So I think that the bins you're talking about are part of the pilot project. If it's not working, we won't continue with it, but we're trying different things to see what works. But one of the things we have to do, and it's part of, sits in addition to enforcement and education, is actually redesign our streets to remove the fly tipping opportunities. You know, big wheelie bins outside chicken shops attract things. Yes. They should be in their backyard or their loading area, or whatever it is. We haven't done that. So some of that redesign will come into that, and it ties in, you know, with the street waste and times collections for shops and things, which is what we were trying with those bins. And so some of that will change too. So there's lots of moving parts, but as we've heard, in some areas we're starting to see some differences. Some areas have bigger problems and it will take a bit of time, but I think if we're sitting here in 6 months or 12 months, you'll be able to see a significant difference. We will tell you, I am 100% confident we will turn this round.
What I did recently again is that the neighbour of one of the chicken shop said to me, because they know where I am and, you know, as a councillor, and said to me, speak to these people because all their rubbish is at the back and it's the flies and everything. So I went there and they said, we need to have this sorted. So they said, yes, we apologise, that person should come and take the rubbish. We'll be coming tonight. I says, yes, because or else you could have beat me up. I'll report it because that's health and safety. So he said, yes. So I went there the next day. I said, everything's sorted? He said, yes, thank you. I said, make sure it don't happen again because there's people complaining to me about it.
I mean, what I would say on that, and I think it's advice not just for councillors, but for any public watching, and I think Gary and James will be able to kind of elaborate on this, is always report things because we map it. It allows us to see where problems are developing, where there are sitting problems. Anything that's reported on the app, it allows us to pick it up quicker because it goes straight to the cabs, but equally we map that as for hotspots and fly, and it gives us, the more data we have, the more we know how to target resources and deal with some of those issues that Councillor Masters was raising earlier about, some areas need more resources. So I would encourage everyone to report everything. The more we get, the more we know, the more we can solve.
Thank you very much.
James, sorry, Jen, if I can. James, can we agree to an action plan? Jamie's department can send around a schedule of the road cleaners down to the neighborhood. So at least we as a local councillor, who's just okay. I mean, let's do something in that way. So if that's possible.
I think the bones of the plan we're going to work through are set out in paragraph 6.7 around the discovery phase, definition, design, and then delivery. And that's the type of approach we'll take. There's a whole range of spreadsheets and data and stuff that sit after that. I think we've got a 12, 18 month program ahead of us. But one thing that we haven't mentioned, I don't think it's in the report, is about us working, and we've done a lot of work with Keep Tidy in the past around fly tipping and enforcement and cleansing. We're going to engage Keep Tidy to do regular inspections of the borough. So we've got an independent, they've got a really well-defined nationwide assessment process that they do, and we're going to get them in key points through the next 18 months to monitor what we're doing, and hopefully that will show a good degree of improvement.
I know you're right, Jamie, and I have a very good response during my conversing in a couple of weeks' time. I mean, there is a very swift response. Fly tipping hotspot, we have been addressed, but it's just we local councillors in the neighborhood, like we have the Green Street West, East, and the Bolian neighborhood. If we knew that this is the number of the staff who are working in these areas, so just share that schedule with us. Yeah, at least we know that who is coming to this area. So what are the days? I mean, just the mapping, like James said. I think that would be very helpful when we are just interacting with the residents. At least we can explain to them.
Thank you very much. We'll have to move on now to the next item.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Well, if you'll excuse me, Chair, I don't think you need me anymore. So I could go home and eat.
Committee will now move to item 6 on the agenda, street drinking. This item is to allow the Commission to review the policies to tackle street drinking, which leads to antisocial behaviour in the borough. I'm delighted to welcome to this meeting Councillor Zulfikar Ali, lead member for Health and Adult Social Care, Councillor Firoza Bekiwala, deputy lead member of Health and Adult Social Care, Colin Ansell, corporate director of Adults and Health, and Jason Strait, director of Public Health. Thank you. Like to go ahead, Councillor Ali?
Oh, yeah, I think it's papers on my name.
Hello, it's actually it's a housing report, Chair, not mine. Sarah's here as well, but is Tim around? We're looking at item 7, aren't we, Chair?
Item 6, so it's, sorry.
Because as much as I love you, we are only on item 6.
I thought we were moving quick. I thought we were quickly moving. I thought we were moving forward.
No, we're not that quick.
Yeah. So it's Councillor. I'm afraid it's Councillor Beckel again, but I can come in if I need to at some point, Chair.
It's okay, Chair. I'll just say some opening remarks. Members will be aware that we've just recently concluded our consultation into the PSPO on alcohol and the PSPO into dog fouling. Members will also be aware that street drinking does have a cumulative negative effect on some of our residents and the impacts and enjoyment that people have on the streets of Newham and in public spaces. You'll see from the paper that we have set out information and data that shows enforcement in this area, but also work that needs to be done to ensure that all residents can enjoy a safer, healthier and cleaner Newham. Working with our partners in public health, you'll see that it's not just an enforcement-led approach, but it's also a public health one. Street drinking does cause a negative impact, not just to the street scene, but also to people's health. So we work in close collaboration with our partners, the CSP, and also through public health to ensure that people are responsible when they drink, but also where they are becoming aggressive when they do so, that we are enforcing in an appropriate and proportionate manner. And Chair, I move the drinking paper.
Thank you, Councillor Beckles. Councillor Ali, would you like to go ahead, please?
Thank you, Chair, and I agree with Councillor Beckel with respect to the impact of street drinking, on public health. I mean, clearly this is a social habit that has been there for many years, so it's going to take a bit of time and effort for us to convince people not to do that, and whether we do that through behavioural change or whether we do that through enforcement, as Councillor Beckel was suggesting, is something that we need to try. But certainly, in the current situation where NHS is going through a serious pandemic and more people are actually ending up in A&E, we need to do everything we can to reduce the pressure on A&E, and this is an area that which we can actually work on joint basis to make sure that we help those people. And we do that. I mean, particularly, for example, from rough sleeping perspective, as you know, Chair, we have managed to accommodate very many people. We managed to deal with the behavior issue in some cases, and we have enabled people to move on with their life. But this is an area that is of a grave concern, really, and I think we need to move ahead to see whatever we can do to tackle this issue and support people. Whether we do that through enforcement, I think it will be, time will tell, but certainly I'm sure colleagues from police will be able to say a few words on this if they are here. That this is an enforcement issue as well from police perspective. I mean, they do have powers to enforce, drunken disorderly behaviour if that is something that is observed. But it's a joint effort that we need to work together, and it needs to be sustained. We just can't make a start and then leave it. But it's got to be worked together, and I think a community public space protection order is something. Is the way forward. And to be honest, Chair, when I worked as an officer in Southend, I actually introduced this in Southend, and it was quite effective. This was back about 8-9 years ago, but it's something that we ought to be trying. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Gary, would you like to?
Excuse me, sorry, thank you, Chair. Yeah, certainly agree with both the members. I think the one thing I would say, is obviously Councillor Beckles has mentioned the work alongside this, and we talked about it in the paper around the public space protection order. We've heard some of the alcohol-related ASB in the borough. I think that the point I would like to make is, we see the data through the paper. It's just interesting to see the data coming through to the councils, my own service over the last 5 odd years, to the police, to our public health colleagues, specifically the A&E related alcohol data from the senior A&E instances is relatively, not massively surprising over the last couple of years of COVID, to be fair, because people generally weren't supposed to be on the streets, and we saw that similar for people maybe habitually street drinking as well. A lot of people are taken in as well, and it's not just obviously homeless people street drinking is an element of that, but it's cultures as well. I think that the point I would probably just say is, whilst the data is down, I think we hear it. I hear it at local assemblies. I hear it through residents. Enough meetings to know that even a relatively minor amount of street drinking anywhere causes an issue for the community. Completely accept that and understand that totally. I've worked in other areas of London. I've seen that. I think so we would look to a public space protection order to give ourselves, give police those extra powers beyond those under the Criminal Justice Act 67, the ASB Crime and Policing Act. Let's just deal with things through antisocial behaviour legislation. This extra response under a public space protection order gets us to look at the likely to occur issues. If we know something's happening in the area enough, we and the police can look to do that, and police are quite eloquent in how they use that power. The last point I think I would make, though, is, and about Councillor Ali, we work closely with public health colleagues. We were close with the Commission services there. Our homeless outreach team were fantastic. Making with police colleagues, we look at this from a holistic approach, and we look to obviously support those who are vulnerable initially. We will warn, we will look to move on, we will look to support, and in the end, we will look to use enforcement. And again, the enforcement around this is a lot where people are being abusive, public urination, etc. We will look to take enforcement strongly.
Thank you. Chief Inspector.
Well, thank you. I would echo what James and Gary have said. From a police perspective, without repeating myself, the issue that Gary's mentioned, clearly are areas of concern for the police, and we will do our utmost to work with you to enforce that. And, I would welcome it absolutely from a policing perspective, but as was alluded to earlier on, we have to make sure that we are consistent with it and we continue to do it. I think from my perspective, I can do that commitment, and that's good to go.
Any members would like to ask you? Councillor Gray?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Great, we're going to get this reintroduced, the SPO. I'm a little unclear, if it is approved, when will it be enforced?
So we're going to Cabinet on the 11th of January.
Yeah.
There's a 6-week appeal process for both this and the one for dog nuisance. So you got a legal 6-week appeal process that will be we'll give you the exact date later, but at the end of February, by the time it comes into force.
So that early then, yeah? Oh, brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah,
I mean, what does concern me though, and I'll take on board and welcome, Chief Inspector, your commitment to this, is just resources. In the past, when we had the order in force, there was a problem with capacity by our ASB and the police to actually deal with street drinkers, especially if they were drunk. I think the police were much reluctant to take them in because they might have to take them straight to hospital and they would tie up a lot of resources. But so I'm concerned about the council's capacity because our ASB numbers are significantly reduced since then. Police are under enormous pressures, especially with COVID. So I'm sure as a scrutiny committee, we need to recognise that and incorporate this in any recommendations. And just, finally, and Councillor Ali also worked with me. In the past, we were trying to deal with street homeless around the Stratford Centre. Just before COVID actually struck, we were about to implement a plan of dealing with, it's like a flow chart, like an escalation of how to warn rough sleepers, especially those who were refusing to engage with offers of support, who were causing either themselves or to others a problem. And it was like an escalation from, in this case, it was the homeless link workers, to the ASB, council ASB team, then to the police. And there was like a flow chart, which could, in the end up with that person being arrested by the police, not for behaviour as such, for breach of orders. So I'm sure members would like to know that this is possible. We have a particular problem in my ward, in Portway, since everybody's talking about the problems in their ward, as we always do, these committees, where it's been pretty horrendous with gangs of drunken youths being, making noise nuisance and seriously harassing young women as they go by. And we've tried various things to do that. That would have been, I think, it's certainly a lot easier once this order is in. But if we could have like a flow chart or something, information to members, this is what you do if you've got a hotspot. Encourage people to complain and all those things as well. But this is what we can do. And these are the various steps and stages, and we need to think about how we're going to get the resources to deliver that. So sorry for being a bit long-winded, but great, it's going to come out soon. But we need resources to do it.
Yeah. Shall I come back, Chair? Yeah, it's a very clear question, Councillor. I think absolutely we don't enter any work we do on public space protection, or whether it's this or a range of other issues Councillor Beck was discussing on a regular basis with police colleagues, likely, yes, resources is an issue. I think what we will look to do, and I've probably mentioned this in previous meetings as well, and again, whether it comes through from the data, and apologies if it doesn't from me, whilst street drinking is an issue and clearly is an issue that's raised, the data is really low and the areas are not that spread out, so we should be able to hotspot some of these police colleagues. What I've talked to this commission before, on the fact that we need to identify those areas and be a bit more intelligent, like where my officers actually go, and we will look to hit these areas with police colleagues, and not just from the enforcement perspective, but that, and you talked about the flow chart, which we can work with Councillor Ali and his colleagues in public health and Antisocial care, police colleagues as well, to look at the escalation in that process. But ultimately, we will look to target those areas. The one thing I probably would say is, whilst the public space protection order, particularly on street drinking, I've worked on these in a number of boroughs in London, is really helpful because it gives us what's called a likely to occur, where we know something might happen and we know something's happened before, and it gives us the power, delegated officers from us and also the police, the opportunity to confiscate alcohol where we might not have done before. There are laws being broken if people are being abusive to people on the street, if they're causing noise issues, if they're public urination, if there's ASP. We do have the ASP Act. There are a range of powers, drunk and disorderly, etc. We can target anyway, so we don't need to wait for this. I think this puts a bit of a marker on it for us as an authority, gives I suppose our mission of what we want to do on this, make sure the public understand why we're taking this seriously, and just back it up. And I think your question is absolutely right. We can't certainly create more resource to do this. We just need to be caliber and more intelligent when we do it, and respond to the complaints where they come up.
Thank you, Gary. Councillor Labuda.
Yes, looking at the graphs on 26 and 27, it looks as if people are not complaining much about the service. I mean, there's no service requests at all. Even Plasto South doesn't even have any. So you see, what happens is certain areas that you get this street drinking. Wilco is one of them. If you go to Wilkinson in Stratford, that's where they gather around there during the day, which is it's not actually pleasant, because there's about 8 mattresses there. So it goes into homelessness as well as street drinking. But that Wilco area, I think people should target it, because it is quite bad when you pass to go to Wilkinson. There'll be about 8 or 10 mattresses, and they are all actually sharing whatever they are sharing, whether it's cider or whatever they are sharing. And it's really embarrassing to see that, because that one can be sorted out very quickly. I mean, in my area, there's only one man now in Tesco. That's the only one we see. Looks as if everybody has gone during the pandemic. There's only one man in Plasto South, actually, because it's Tesco. But generally, I think when people are not complaining, it means you're doing something right. But at the same time, there's these hotspots that we have to, like John was saying, we have to actually target. Mine is that Wilco and the Stratford Centre itself, McDonald's. Those are the 2 places, but they don't usually drink there. It's that corner at Wilco in Stratford. That's where we have to target.
Major, just on your point around the Wilkinson, is something that I had raised previously, and it has been picked up through the public health team, because a lot of those individuals who are drinking, they are classed as homeless. There are other issues there, and they have been engaged by the public health team, and I imagine Fiona Hackland's team, who managed the contract with CGL, about that engagement. They are vulnerable individuals where enforcement probably wouldn't necessarily be the right answer, because you know, how will you enforce upon someone who hasn't got fixed abode and
Exactly.
and issue a fixed penalty notice? So it's part of this approach of taking the public health approach and enforce upon those who are not necessarily homeless, but are just street drinking, causing a nuisance. And I'm sure we can all think of areas within our own walls, those individuals who do that, but also taking the public health approach and helping these individuals to support, and also through diversion through other programs as well.
Councillor Masters?
No.
Yeah, I was going to endorse what's been said about what really does decline in numbers. I mean, in my ward, there's a lot of street drinking on street corners, and Central Park, I remember about a year before the pandemic, a real peak, lots of complaints. But my concern is just these people are being moved around the borough. And I think a public health approach is fine if people want to be supported to come off drink. But surely the problem is a lot of these people who are causing the trouble are perfectly happy drinking and don't see it as a problem, don't want help. So it's just, you know, what happens in that occasion. And my worry is that it's the same as with drug users, that we're just shifting the problem round the borough. And the reason we're not seeing it so much is they've probably been shifted somewhere where they're kind of lower key. That's my gut, because I know certainly with drug use in my ward, it literally shifts street to street. And, you know, depending on the week, I'll get complaints from different roads about the same people.
Also at on Burgess Road, at top of Burgess Road for East Ham, you know, near to the Little, you see a group there.
Yeah.
Openly drinking.
Paladin and Caulfield as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and because I think it's really important, for example, especially on Councillor Masters' issue. So some people don't need help. They have chosen a certain lifestyle. It is not illegal to drink on the street. It is illegal to cause a nuisance whilst doing so. So the example of drinkers and then people making lewd comments or comments on criminal residents walking past or being rowdy or being noisy or being upsetting or being threatening, that is what we will enforce. People drinking, you can have a drink in our parks, you can have a picnic in our parks. You know, you're not allowed to be rowdy, you're not allowed to urinate in public. You know, so I think it's worthwhile being absolutely clear. So people that choose to drink, whether they're in public or in their own homes, you know, providing they are no nuisance to anybody else, then there isn't any additional action that we can take through this. If people are causing antisocial behaviour and are causing a nuisance, then that is something that we will stop. And if people don't want to engage with us, then we will use whatever methods through enforcement and police colleagues that we can to make sure that they stop causing a nuisance to other residents within the borough.
Councillor Mushta.
So those people at Wilco, what do you class them as?
That's fine.
I don't know, Councillor. I haven't seen them. I haven't seen the complaints on them. So it was a case by case.
Are they a nuisance? Because they're just sitting there and drinking with their mattresses there. Would you call that a nuisance?
I think mattresses being there would certainly be a nuisance, and we should. As I say, I don't know. I haven't seen them myself, but you know, it's certainly something we can look at. But I think it's important that we understand it is nothing that we will do, nothing that the police will do, will make it illegal to be drinking in a street, in a garden, a park, or whatever. It's not an alcohol exclusion zone, which you sometimes get in you know, outside clubs and different stuff. This is something slightly different.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I think here we need a practical approach. I mean, it's not a solution. They will keep reoffending. If you just enforce them, they will come back and do this. Here we need multi-agency approach, like the police, Street Link, St. Mungo's, our homeless service, council's homeless service, they work together. Then they can be referred. I know that some of the customers, complex need customers, they are very challenging. The only solution to this problem is we need a clear pathway for them. They should be housed into the separate accommodations where they can get right sport, the risk management plan, their sport plan should be in place. Yeah, so they are allocated sports workers. So that's that's the pathway where they can get independent living skills, they can just get out of this, they can be treated, they can go to the drug control agency, they can go to the GPs. Some of them, the services there, the drop-in nurse facility. I mean, sometimes if they go outside, they get involved with the peers and they are again relapsed. So these are the basically kind of, this is my comment and suggestion. I think if we just do that multi-agency approach, we can tackle it. Otherwise, we can keep discussing in every meeting. I mean, if enforcement is done, taken to the court, everybody will come back and do again. But this should be a permanent solution. So after all, we have the responsibility to just get them out of this influence, whether it's alcohol, drug, or any other influence. That's basically my comment on this. Yes.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, well, I totally support Ms Tagg's concern, and that's based on his professional experience. I think just we have a practical problem over here. We don't have the resources actually to be able to have such an effective service approach. So yes, if we had some sort of escalation where people would be offered support of alcohol advice agencies, support possibly with housing, but I suspect if people are actually threatened with effective deterrents, such as tickets for disorderly behaviour, things like this, and it's escalated, and they know they're going to be arrested before they're even drunk, and that's going to be more effective. And if that is kept up on hotspots, and we have the capacity and resource to do it, we're never going to necessarily solve the problem, but I think we can make a far bigger impact on it than we have currently.
Yeah, that's great. I will suggest if colleague can approach to Tower Hamlet and the Southern Council, they have very good mechanism on this. I mean, they have the complex need assessment panel who does this stuff. And we can take some of their, model here and we can replicate in one year.
Thank you, Gavin.
I guess, Councillor, just coming back on you really quickly, and hopefully that's a Councillor Gray's point as well. I think absolutely with our colleagues in street homelessness, CGL, the Commission Service under our public health colleagues, I think we have sort of joint approach for those who are potentially street homeless and those who are vulnerable. I think going back to the point Jamie made earlier and the point Councillor Gray said, I think there are different types of people who street drink and are types of ASB. You know, I know absolutely, and we've certainly Councillor Beckles and I have heard in meetings with the mayor and public in private meetings with residents as well. There are some communities of cultures that will do their work at home and come back and go out in the street for the evening. And that's cultural based way of drinking. Some of that will spill into ASB, some of it won't. We have the link into street drinking. We have just the issues that spill out almost from our pub areas and our nighttime economy areas that then go into our parks, etc. And then there is this issue of potentially some of our younger populations drinking in our parks or away from the public eye in a sense and having to deal with that. So I think absolutely there is absolutely a mixture, taking a holistic approach that we will work with colleagues through our street homeless, through our drug misuse services, adult social care, children's social care advice. Absolutely, Council will post that. But I think there is absolutely a time where enforcement must line at points as well for certain people.
Thank you. Thanks. Now move to item 7. Youth violence and its effects on young people in the borough. And we need a review on the update of the actions. I'm delighted to welcome to this meeting Councillor Sarah Rose, Lead Member for Children's Social Care and Education, Councillor Jane Lofthouse, Deputy Lead Member for Education, Councillor Carleen Lee Parkway, Lead Member for Brighter Futures, Tim Aldridge, Corporate Director of the Young People Directorate, Peter Subramanian Looney, Newham's Children and Young People's Commissioner and Corporate Director of Brighter Futures, Audrey Johnson, Director of Early Help and Children's Health for Brighter Futures, Lynn Crank, Assistant Director of Youth Empowerment for Brighter Futures. Emma Cockerell, Director of Operations and Safeguarding Children and Young People Directorate. Just one moment. Matt Edie, Director of Innovation and Transformation, Children and Young People Directorate. Ali Omar, Assistant Director of Improvement, Performance and Change. Michelle Edwards, Head of Youth Offending Operations and Safeguarding. And staying on for this item will be Councillor James Beckles, Jamie Blake, Gary Connors, and Chief Inspector Michael O'Donoghue. Thank you. Councillor Ruiz, would you like to?
I would indeed. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not actually sure that Emma or Ali are here this evening. So thank you for their name check. But as colleagues are aware, we've got a SEND inspection. So I think they're probably, I did explain to Anthony McCalmont that we as Children's Services might not field a full team, but there are a plethora of officers here who will be able to answer every question, I'm sure. Colleagues will remember that this actual report was written in July of this year, and at the last meeting we went through the top lines of the executive response. And if you note in Appendix 3, there is an updated response, and I think that that's what we would probably want to concentrate on this evening. I don't think it's not worth going over what we went over before. So, yeah, I mean, I hope that members will have read the updated responses, and happy for any one of us to take questions.
Questions for Councillor? Yeah,
Sorry, Chair,
Yes.
Councillor, Appendix 3, is this a separate?
no, this is on item 7.
The new information is Appendix 3, is it?
Yes, John, it is.
On Appendix 3.
I would have said the page number, but I don't have a page number. It was in the original. It was in the pack that Roger sent out, so I'm assuming it's in the pack that was printed. So,
page 53.
Is it page 53? Thank you, Jane.
Give it a go.
Page 53.
Page 53.
Oh yeah, I can see that now. It's on the side. Sorry. Apologies.
You got me worried.
Would you like to?
Is John asking a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Gouda, ask it.
Sir, I don't know. That's a very comprehensive report, quite interesting to read. I just hope all the things that are put in here, if they are actioned, we'll have a fantastic children and young people services.
I hope so too, Councillor.
Yeah. Okay. On page 36, I mean, you mentioned about the new armed crime increasing. I just wondered whether, you know, during the pandemic, I wonder whether I've got a number of the stabbings that happened during the pandemic in Newham.
I'm not sure
to know whether you have,
but I expect him or Gary might.
Yeah, just to have an idea
Gary,
whether,
probably.
Yeah.
Councillor, I can just say I don't think we've got a particular number of incidents during the pandemic as such, but what I can say is we've seen overall reductions in many of the measures that we look at, whether it's around children who go and young people who go missing, whether it's about those known to youth offending services who reoffend, whether it's young people who are arrested on and charged on weapons-related crimes, those who are charged in relation to substance misuse, and those who are convicted in terms of any violent crimes. So the pattern has been reducing, although clearly, as the councillor is aware, we've still had a number of serious incidents in the borough.
Thank you. I'd also like to invite James Eccles.
I've got nothing further to add to what Councillor Ruiz and others have said.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I ask? Yes.
Great.
You go first, please.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, so it's got a really, really comprehensive report, and it'd be great to get this actually put into practice. It's just one thing is, appreciate this is about anti-gangs and exploitation, but I can't see a direct reference to the very large and largely hidden Eastern European community in Newham. I'm sure we're all sort of pretty shocked about these settled status applications. And now I do understand that there is a gang problem, a very different gang problem, perhaps from what we're used to in London. But there are East European gangs, there is exploitation, especially sexual exploitation of young women, and I believe a degree of violent crime. And this is nothing about these European communities as a whole, but just like we have in all our communities, elements of violent criminality, which young people suffer the most. So I'm just wondering, is the programme addressing how we can sort of do better outreach with this really large, important community, and the extent of the possible problems that they are facing? And does this fit into this package, the specific needs of the East European community?
I think so, but Tim's probably got a better answer.
Yeah, no.
I can come in.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you. So just in, I'm Michelle from the Youth Offending Service, just in terms of the Youth Offending Service and children that we have seen entering the youth justice system. So we have seen a small emerging group from children from the Roma Gypsy background specifically. Those groups have included both females and males of school age, of school age, and they have been either involved in offending behaviour, but also at risk of being sexually exploited. So the females have been at risk of being sexually exploited based on their living arrangements and their family arrangements. So there is a partnership multi-agency response in partnership with the Travellers Community, which is the voluntary organisation, to deliver specific and tailored intervention that supports and empowers those children and provides additional support, particularly around education, training, employment, and also around their living arrangements, so that they are supported to live in accommodation that's secure and stable.
Thank you, Michelle.
Can I just add to that, Jen? Because there's also, and Michelle and other colleagues probably are aware, we do have a specific voluntary sector organisation who I know have worked in the borough for a significant number of years.
Yeah.
And I think I'm right in saying that Councillor Beccles was at an event with them last week or whatever. But I mean, I know that they are only too happy to work with us. So.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And we've been in liaison with them, Councillor Sarah, in terms of ensuring that they can provide some support, particularly in terms of a mentoring capacity within the community with children and their families.
Just a quick supplementary though, and I appreciate the Roma community is a disadvantaged community, but the wider, and again, not all Roma families are from East European. There's a settled travellers community in Newham. But what about the 20% of our population plus who are from the former east of Europe? What sort of organisations I'll be working with to work with them? Romania in particular, Lithuanians. I'm trying to say this is great here, but there's one community that isn't evidenced that we're recognising they may have similar issues and how we're going to address them.
If I can respond, Councillor, I mean, thank you for that. My understanding is that group is not currently disproportionately represented within some of the cohorts that we're working with. But if I may, we'll take that away and we'll look at whether there are any specific issues for that group, and also which are the best voluntary sector agencies we can work with to engage with them, and how we make sure, in fact, all of our commissioned services are well placed to engage with that group.
Thank you.
Yes.
Myself and Councillor Daniel Lee Parkway and Councillor Lofthouse went to their place in Glasgow and met with a few of the children that are there under direction of Michelle Edwards. And I think they're doing a very good job with these kids. You know, we notice the difference as well. They're more focused. And, you know, I think more of those type of buildings for these kids, save them from going into prison and getting worse. You know, that's what I can say.
Councillor Lee Parkway.
Councillor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chair. It's good to have that. It's a very good report. Thank you, Sarah and Carleen.
1 minute. Go ahead. Carleen, I can see you. I'll let you come in now. Yeah,
Thank you, Chair. Do you want me to speak now or shall I wait?
Let Mushtaq speak and then you speak after him.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I just want to look on this living care.
Can you just put your mask?
Yes, sir.
I hear you.
Okay. Thank you, Joy.
My hearing is not that good.
Yeah, I'm extra kind.
Thank you.
Do we have any data on this living care? How many have been supported by our youth advisor and been moved into the education or employment? I think just to know the impact our services are creating on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take that question. So all of our children who are in care get specific support from the virtual school service. We have a specific two specific roles, two new roles that were introduced this year to support care leavers who are not in education, employment or training. And what we can see is that young girls who are, and young women rather, who are in the leaving care cohort tend to have better education, employment and training engagement than young boys or young men. So what we know about our group in Newham is that we've got a significant proportion of care leavers who attend university, and we're working really closely both with other directorates to look at apprenticeships, but also working closely with our Newham Works to ensure that our young people have the opportunities to engage with local employers and achieve employment. And through those specific education, employment and training workers, they are supporting young people who aren't currently engaged in activities to take the first steps towards positive engagement. And one of the things that we are very much looking forward to launching next year is our care leavers hub, which is going to be called the Cove, which we're due to open in March next year. And in that space for care leavers, there'll very much be both the opportunity to spend time there getting support, but also engage in positive activity. So there's a really strong focus through our corporate parenting panel and board, which is chaired by Councillor Lee Parkway, and a real focus on a refreshed care leavers offer that's part of your pack tonight, which is all about ensuring care leavers are both aware of their entitlements, but also aware of the support that's available for them.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lee Parkway.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come in on the previous question in regards to the work around the cohort of young people that was mentioned by Councillor Gray, and I just thought it would be remiss of me not to just pick up the points in regards to that whole systems approach of prevention work, and that takes place amongst our partners, that not just be in the local authority, that be in the voluntary community organisations that we work with very closely, our commission services that we work with, but also the work of the PEC, that many different partners work inside of in order to keep children from risk and harm. So I just thought I'd take the opportunity just to give a wider picture of actually the various different pieces of work that's taking place in order to keep our eyes on the very issues that Councillor Gray spoke about. And I do appreciate that the comments that Tim made in regards to they are not the cohort that's identified within the piece of work that we're specifically discussing this evening, but they're also not the cohort that we're not forgetting about. We are very much aware and are working hard with our partners in order to make sure that we do what's right by all young people here in the borough.
Thank you. Would Audrey Johnson like to go ahead, please?
I don't have an awful lot to add, thank you, except to say that the work of the Preventing Child Exploitation and Harm Hub really works to identify those young people who are at risk in our community much earlier on, as Councillor Lee Parkway said. So, and that is a partnership approach. It covers a whole range of partners, from schools, primary and secondary schools. It even includes children's centres, the voluntary sector, the police, and a whole range of partners to really identify those children who are at risk of exploitation at the very, very earliest opportunity. And so that there is a real clear understanding about the risks that they face, and a very robust offer package that is put in place to reduce that risk. And that's not just with the individual child, but with the siblings within the household and within the parents as well. So just to add to what Councillor Lee Parkway said in terms of the work of the PEC, that it's really about identifying those children much earlier and intervening in a really robust multi-agency way. Thank you.
Very much. Matt Eady.
Evening, Chair. I've got nothing more particular to add that's not already been said, although I probably could add that there's been considerable amount of work happened over the summer holidays.
Nice cat.
Nice cat. Lots of reviews, a youth safety sprint, which is culminating in an integrated action plan across the partnership, and an agreed narrative on how we tackle youth safety and keeping children safe from harm. And 9 particular things that, if we do these things well, are going to ensure we keep our young people safe.
Thank you very much. Would any members like to ask a question? Councillor Masters.
I'm just interested in knowing, finally taking off my mask for a bit this evening. What will success look like for you? Are there any specific targets? Because I'm seeing a lot of really exciting strategy here, but you know, how will we know it's actually worked?
Tim, would you like to?
Yeah, and I can see Councillor Lee Parkway has a hand up. I don't know, Colin, if you'd like to come in first.
If you won't mind, Tim, I guess from my point of view, Councillor Masters, in regards to what does good look like? Good looks like no child is at risk of harm. Every child here in the borough is healthy, safe, happy, and can meet their full potential. And so I guess in a nutshell, that's what good looks like. Obviously, that may look differently for different children, but ultimately that would be what good looks like, and that's completely detailed in the outcomes framework that we all have been privy to in previous different meetings at various different times. But I'll pass over to Tim, who may want to elaborate any more, and then maybe Geetha might want to come in.
Thank you, Councillor Lee Parkway. Chair, if I may, I think it is about ensuring we've got that cohesive whole system approach that Councillor Lee Parkway raised earlier, that we've got a really clear and coherent offer that ensures that no child or young person falls through the gaps, and ensures that we do our best to identify those young people who might be at risk as early as possible, to ensure that we share intelligence effectively across the partnership, and that we've got effective routes to engage a diversity of young people with a range of different needs, that we've got a real clear eye on measuring outcomes so we understand the impact of the work and where it is successful, and that we do our best as a partnership to reduce harm, and we've got a way of measuring the reduction of harm across the piece. And also we've got the right systems in place to learn when things go wrong, but also learn when things go right, and actually build on best practice. So it's about, I think, having real coherence, a clarity of measurement, and very effective multi-agency working that improves outcomes for children and young people and reduces harm in the community.
Thank you, Tim. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'll just add to those things. I think the important part of the work we've been doing is to make sure that public health response has data and evidence that drives what we do. So the actions and all of the activity that you see is very much steeped in evidence-based practice. Youth Endowment Fund toolkit and mapping was done in the summer, and it has quite a lot of detailed programs and evidence-based practice, which we in Newham have been using as why we do what we do. And you can see in that toolkit very much about the things that have huge impact and the things that are still emerging impact. And I think we have a good kind of scope of all of the areas that we're working on. I would say that absolutely, apart from all of the data that we would need to be and are collecting, it's really very much about what young people tell us. We set up Next Gen Newham, Councillor Lee Parkway, in early part of this year. It's very much about making sure that whatever we do is about hearing and genuinely listening to young people, but actually young people and families being part of the solutions and creating what we have told and talked about as the whole systems response. So it's about how young people and families feel, but also how they feel connected, and making sure that wherever possible, we're utilising and supporting them to share their lived experiences so that our services are very relevant to those young people. And then I think the last thing around measuring success, it's been mentioned that, of course, we have to engage and we do have to make sure that no young person is harmed, because once they're in systems, we need to make sure we act very quickly and that we have the right support services in place. But our role has to be very much that young people do not experience harm in the first place, because we know that that experience is so detrimental in terms of their life chances and outcomes. So I just add those things, if that's okay. There is a dashboard that we have that measures a number of these areas. And of course, we will continue to use data, evidence, and evaluate what we're doing so that we can make sure that we are having the greatest outcome and impact for our young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Lee Parkway.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add a couple of just little bits, just to maybe finish this piece off, which is more about knowing what we know. I did want to speak about children and young people and what it is that they tell us. The importance of hearing from children and young people is far greater than we understand sometimes. And actually they are their very best advocate. They know themselves, their parents, their families know themselves. And I think we using the data and information that comes from them that sometimes is quite free in how we receive it, but also sometimes can be quite difficult, is really important that we capture that data, we capture that information that we are being given in order to make sure that we are keeping children safe from harm at all times. But there are other things that have happened, and I'm not sure if it's been picked up previously by maybe Tim earlier, in regards to the work of the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, knowing what it is that we know, and actually using that data to inform our decisions, our services, and how we work as a local authority, a one council, in order to make sure that children and young people are at the heart of everything that we do. That really is important, and also that universal and preventative services that minimize adverse childhood experience, that has got to be key in regards to what it is that we are doing. It's not just about doing to, it's about doing with, which is really important in the greater schemes of keeping children and young people safe here in Newham.
Thank you. Councillor Guda.
Yeah, throughout reading this report, the only concerning thing I have is the high turnover of social workers. How are we going to support the young people when we are having such a high turnover of social workers? How will they be supported when they are going to change from one social worker to the other? And what incentive can we give for social workers to stay in Newham? Because that's a big worry for me. Because you won't have that continuity of care if you are changing the social workers. The social workers are going and coming and going and coming. How will we support these young people?
Who's going to take that? Tim?
Very happy. I know Councillor Ruiz had her hand up previously, though.
It's about a different point, Tim. I was going to make another point, but you carry on about workforce.
Yeah, thank you. It's a subject I could talk for hours on, but I know, Chair, you won't want me to do that. But what I will say is there has been a tremendous amount of activity. And what I'm really pleased to say is over the last 6 months or so, we're starting to see real benefits of all of that activity. So we've spent a lot of time focusing on the conditions for our social work staff. So through a caseload review, we've secured additional investment to increase the number of case holding social workers and reduce caseloads. We've also reduced the ratio of supervisor to supervisee, which ensures that social workers get more support. We brought in a lot of systems and processes to clarify what the expectations are of social workers, and we know that really helps them do their job. And we made lots of improvements to the recording systems. Alongside that, we've really strengthened our workforce offer. So we've got a really clear career progression offer, alongside it training and development. And through the introduction of a clinical director, a clinical social work team, and a team of practice development social workers, we've really enabled a support system around social workers. And over the last 3 months, we've appointed 60 permanent new starters, and we are starting to reduce the proportion of agency staff that we use. Last year we were just under 50% agency. In November, I think we reduced that down to below 35%. So we're moving in the right direction. We are piloting work such as automated onboarding, which is all about improving the introduction and the start of work for new social workers. And actually, we've also got it's not quite an award-winning video, but it's certainly a video that we've had lots of comments and positive feedback on. So, and actually, just this evening, whilst I was on this call, I got a message from the London councils asking for more information about what we're doing on social work recruitment, because we are now getting a name for ourselves as leading the way in London. So we've managed to halve our rate of churn from last year to this year. We know we've still got a long way to go. And one of the challenges we've got is to continue to bring in newly qualified staff, because we know that's a group we can recruit, although they need additional support for the first year or more of practice. But I think we have a very positive trajectory, and we've achieved that against the backdrop of COVID and a worsening market condition in the local area.
Thank you, Tim.
Can I just add something? I just want to praise you on the strategy you are using to work with East London University. I've noticed that you are working with them so that some of the social workers that are being trained in University of East London are for you. So you've got a block of social workers. When they actually finish, they come to Newham. I think that's a very good strategy.
Chair, I need to chair.
Councillor Royers.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just really wanted to add to the points that Councillor Lee Parkway was making earlier, and that there are significant timings in a child's life, and it's about getting the transitioning periods at the right time. So I was at a school today where they are very clearly working with their year 5s and 6s to ensure that they are they have a good mental health and well-being and are nurtured and cared for, so that when they do move on to the wider world in the secondary school, they have far more confidence to say no when they're approached by people. And the other area I think that we don't forget, but for every victim of crime, there are also perpetrators. And we need to also remember that they come from families too, and the adverse effect that has on that family. And we also work across the council, not just in children's social care, to ensure that those families are also supported. So just because something really bad has happened to one of their children, we need to recognise that actually we have opportunities to ensure that the other family members are not necessarily tainted by that experience. So it's really quite complex, but it is ensuring that all of our children, no matter what they have done, feel that they still have a little bit of hope left.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ruiz. Councillor Mushtaq.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to know, Councillor Lee Parkway just mentioned about joint need assessment report. As far as my understanding is concerned, this report was compiled in 2016 and published then. I just want to know if you can educate me if we have a new report after that, because I haven't seen that, frankly speaking. I was just looking into it. If it's done, then it's great.
Yeah, we've got one was published this year, Councillor Mushtaq, and I think it's probably, I don't know where it's available, but it must be on our website. Yeah, so we have an updated report that certainly went to various committees, but it is now agreed and is on our website. But I'm sure somebody brighter than me can send you the link.
Can I just, Chair, if you wouldn't mind, can I just add that joint needs assessment went to the Health and Wellbeing Board, where it was presented there, and also, if my understanding, it also went to Tim. Shake your head if I'm wrong. It also went to Cabinet, if I remember rightly. I thought it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. I've just put a link in the chat so colleagues can, members rather, can access it via the chat.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to know, I mean, I was a little bit concerned because over the period of 4 or 5 years, the social and the economic macro and the micro indicators have significantly changed.
Yeah.
If we have the latest data, so definitely that would be the right way to support our children. Thank you, Councillor Deepak.
Thank you.
Chair, can I just add something if you don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
So just in relation to the work of the JSNA, there is also another document, that being the request report, Foundation for Change, which is also a document that has a lot of data and gives us a lot of information about what's going on here in Newham. So that is also a very useful document, two very different documents, but a very useful document in regards to us knowing what it is that we know. And that also went to Cabinet and also was mentioned at full council.
Yeah, but it was also, Carleen, I think I'm right in saying, I'm sure you sent it out to all members.
I think I did, yeah. It's specifically around the youth safety piece.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Anybody else need to make any contribution as we run out of time? No? Thank you very much. Right, we move to item.
They have questions from them.
1 minute. Thank you, everyone. We're going to be moving now to item 8, which is our work program, and if anybody needs to leave, fine.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
How can you leave the work program?
Thank you.
How can they leave the work program?
No, we can't.
The best part of the evening.
Still,
Well, how can we leave for the work programme? With great pleasure, John.
That's part of the meeting.
Did you want us to leave or not, Chair?
Leave.
I
still have another question.
1 moment, Councillor Laguda would like to ask one further.
Yes, I just wanted to find out if you've got a breakdown of the people that go to the pupil referral services. And we know how many, you have given a lot of statistics about, how many were excluded and everything else. I wanted to find out how many, a breakdown of the people that actually refer to pupil referral services.
Okay, that's a question for Tim just before he pressed the leave button.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and what I can do, Councillor Laguda, and we've just we're at the point of completing an alternative provision review, which is due to be reviewed alongside the outcome of the SEND Commission, and in that review we've got a huge amounts of data and information, and what I can do is through the chair is make sure that you are provided with further information from that report if that's helpful, and if you've got any questions, very happy to answer them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With the work program, are there any?
So they can go.
For the work program for January, you have questions to the borough commander and the antisocial behaviour. And also again,
Sorry, Chair, can we leave now?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Jane,
Jane, would you like to stay or?
Jane want to say concluding remarks, I think.
And thank you. That's 30 minutes of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other suggestion for the work program for January?
January. Where am I?
The borough commander. We also have antisocial behaviour and street walkers.
I want to talk about cuckooing under antisocial behaviour. Cuckooing.
Yes. Anybody else? And for February, modern slavery review. And we need to review the information of the recommendation for the modern slavery review report, community centre board update, and the action plan for the. Are there any more issues? I'm sure there should be.
I don't know. I mean, I think it'd be good to leave some space.
Yes.
I mean, I think we were all shocked by the murder of a 12-year-old girl in another part of the country. And I'd just like to have some idea of how effective our policies have been in terms of addressing violent crime. I mean, because it has gone down, hasn't it, technically?
It's difficult, isn't it, because of COVID?
Yeah, but it would just be interesting to see whether that the pattern of crime has matched COVID or whether it kind of goes beyond that. But I mean, those would be my two.
One of the thoughts I had about that is, why can't we arrange with schools to go to the assemblies and talk to children as a scrutiny commission? We go, we sort of find out when the assembly is, we get in touch with the head teacher and talk. You see, the thing is, we can say what we like because these people don't read papers.
Yes, it's true.
Most of these children, they don't read newspapers, they don't know what's going on. But I think if we have a strategy of going to every school, every secondary school at least, if we go to primary school, it will be year 6. But for all the other schools, it will be even New Vic, there's nothing to stop us going to the colleges. Because you see what happens with the colleges is, the fish and chip, the chicken shops, that's where they recruit a lot of these young children. Because at lunchtime, the big bosses are there, buying them a chicken, buying them, to incentivize them to, then they say, okay, I'll meet you after school. So I think it's something we have to really think. We can talk as much as we like, but if we don't actually do some actions ourselves, we're not going to get anywhere.
Can I suggest one thing, and this leads on? Can I suggest one thing, and it leads on, Joy, from what you're talking about, is I think it is ASB scrutiny, but so it's a crossover with the skills. It's about children, young people in particular, but adults who've got criminal records, trying to get them into real work.
Yeah.
Especially young people, especially, I understand the City of London, it's really, really difficult for a young person from Newham to be able to get a job to be passed as a fit and proper person if they've got a criminal record. Now in London, 1 in 3 males have got a criminal record.
Wow.
And Newham's probably going to be...
It's a very huge problem.
Be more than that,
John.
So in effect, we've got all these talented young people who may have made a stupid error or a mistake or locked out of the job market. I mean, I'm involved in a task force in a different hat about working with the City of London about promoting the number of working class people in the financial services industry.
That's really interesting. I thought
one of the barriers is this. I've been told by fund manager, we can't employ young people with minor criminal records.
But you see, they find it very difficult to get jobs. You are very right.
Yeah, they are.
Very difficult.
The one closer they got, the more crime.
Yeah, because if they don't get jobs, they're going back to crime again. So it's a vicious circle. You don't get a job, you go back to where you were.
9 o'clock and we didn't extend standing order, so the meeting's closed.
So we are talking
even if
this
it's
now
closed, we can still
informal discussion.
Sure, yeah, exactly. Surely that's all that happens. We go informal.
Yeah, but we can't make any decisions on items, but
Yes.
but I did bring this up before 9 o'clock, so as a suggestion.
I mean, I think it's really good. There's that shoe repair business that provided a lot of jobs.
Thank you.
In fact, you know, Susan.
Thank you very much.
That's something we can